Looking for the best web hosting that won't shake you down? I've picked the top 2 contenders, but you can only host your site on one. So I'm pitting Namecheap versus Hostinger to show you which is better for your website need. First, let me explain why I picked these as my best cheap web hosting recommendations. They're both built around the idea of being affordable without feeling stripped down, which is exactly what most people should look for when they're starting out. At the cheapest plan level, they're surprisingly similar. Both position themselves as budget-friendly options that still cover all the basics. By the way, the pricing you see is with my discounts from the description already applied, meaning you won't find lower prices elsewhere. Anyhow, with either one, you're getting a full setup that lets you launch a site without needing to buy a bunch of extras separately. Even on their entry plans, they include things like a free domain for a year, SSL for security, and help with migrating a website if you already have one somewhere else. They also include privacy protection, and there are even website builders with AI included. What makes them feel like safe choices is that they don't cut corners on the important stuff. You still get 24/7 support, and automatic backups are there too. So if you break your site, there's no need to sweat over it. The point is that with the lowest tier, both Hostinger and Namecheap give you everything you need to get started properly without making you feel like you'll need to upgrade immediately or buy a bunch of add-ons just to have a functional website. Let's talk about the actual price and what you get. In other words, the differences, because that's more interesting and valuable when choosing the best web hosting. At first glance, Namecheap wins, but this price difference doesn't really tell the full story. Hostinger's approach is more about value packed into that price. It bundles in more tools that actually affect how your site runs. One big example is performance. Hostinger uses things like faster NVMe storage and built-in caching. This means your site loads quicker and handles traffic better. That might not sound like a big deal, but it kinda is. Smoother sites not only feel better to visit, but are also important for search engine optimization reasons. So the way to think about it is pretty simple. Namecheap is a bit cheaper up front, while Hostinger gives you better performance and a bit more breathing room as your site grows. But whichever you choose, don't forget to apply my discount from the description for the lowest price possible. Alternatively, scan these QR codes for the same best deal. Alright, so both of these cheap web hosting providers position themselves as beginner friendly. Let's see how true that is in reality. Once you actually log in, the experience is pretty damn different. Let's start with Namecheap review. It uses cPanel, which is kind of the classic old school way of managing hosting. And to be fair, there's nothing wrong with it. cPanel has proven to be solid over the years, and it gives you a lot of control. The downside is that it can feel a bit overwhelming and outdated. There are a lot of menus and options, and not all of them are things you might need on day one. After doing an in-depth Hostinger review, I can say it's definitely a different story. It uses its own custom control panel called hPanel, which focuses more on just the essentials, so you're not gonna need to dig through a bunch of settings to figure out where things are. It also adds some helpful extras, like built-in speed tests, troubleshooting tools, and even things like a temporary 24-hour performance boost, which is free once a month. Hostinger isn't perfect though. Updates often move things around, and it can feel slightly slower at times, but overall, it's just easier to get comfortable with. There are more differences than just a panel. Both platforms cover the basics like one-click WordPress installs, backups, and vulnerability scanning, so you're not missing anything essential. But there are just more Hostinger features that rely on built-in tools. You get things like WooCommerce integration, multi-site support, and a bunch of AI-driven features, including tools like Codee, which is the best AI chatbot I've tried. I barely ever need support anymore because it can answer pretty much everything about my hosted sites on Hostinger. There are also more AI tools, even though Namecheap has recently been adding them too. Namecheap is different here. It still gives you what you need to build a site or even an online store, but for more advanced Namecheap features, you'll definitely need third-party plugins. It also focuses more on business and marketing tools, including some AI-based options, which might appeal more if you already know what you're doing and want that extra flexibility. So my take is this. If you're just starting out and want something that feels guided and easy, Hostinger has an edge with its cleaner interface and built-in tools. If you're more experienced or prefer having deeper control and don't mind a more traditional setup, Namecheap with cPanel can still be a really solid choice. When it comes to Hostinger versus Namecheap performance, as I've already mentioned when covering pricing and plans, there's a gap. Hostinger has a bit more oomph with its shared hosting plans. It uses NVMe storage, which is faster than traditional SSDs used by Namecheap. On top of that, it has a wider global reach with around 13 data centers compared to Namecheap's 4, which helps keep loading times consistent no matter where your visitors are coming from. In real-world testing, that usually translates to hosting or loading pages faster, which is also important for SEO reasons. Slower sites get pushed back in search results. Google recommends 2.5 seconds or faster for the best results. And while both beat this benchmark even with their shared hosting plans, Hostinger was faster. Plus, it handles traffic spikes a bit more smoothly. So Hostinger does have the edge in performance comparison. That said, Namecheap isn't bad by any means, and it's been steadily improving over time. For a small or low traffic site, you might not even notice much of a difference day to day. All right, I have to give you my final take on Namecheap versus Hostinger. Both Hostinger and Namecheap are solid budget picks. Namecheap is a slightly cheaper option that gets the job done. Hostinger costs slightly more, but gives you more in terms of features and performance, making it the stronger value overall. Picking the best hosting service really comes down to this. Do you want to save a bit more money and do things yourself, or spend roughly the same and save time with a smoother, more modern setup? Either way, you're in good hands at a friendly price. Just don't forget my discounts from the description. Thanks for watching this web hosting comparison till the end, and see you guys around.